Hey there, welcome on into our Facebook Live. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Lauber. We are tracking the latest with Tropical Storm Francine. Yep, still a tropical storm, even though this thing is churning in the Gulf of Mexico and dumping a lot of rain. If you've got friends and family in the valley, they've probably told you it's been a little bit of a rough Tuesday morning for them, but yeah, that's the name of the game with the tropics. It's, I consider the Gulf of Mexico a giant pool. Somebody does a cannonball on the other end, we're going to feel it. So we kind of all get the impacts of whatever tropical trouble is brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. So we got a lot to unpack. Thankfully, the forecast doesn't seem that bad for us. That has been a huge plus. Unfortunately, what tends to be a rainmaker for us is this little bit of tropical trouble, and it doesn't look like we're going to get a whole lot out of it. So let's dive into what's happening. The latest advisory coming out just 40 minutes ago. The 10 a.m. advisory didn't really have a whole lot of change for us, but there are certain signs that Francine is trying to get its act together. There's been a little bit of obstacles have been an issue this morning for the storm, and that's a benefit for us, of course. But again, let's dive right into it. This storm packing maximum sustained winds of 65 miles per hour, so that hasn't changed since this morning. Gusts to hurricane strength, they're at 75 miles per hour. That has not changed either. We've been tracking small changes in the movement. So it was eventually a change to a due north direction around 6 o'clock this morning, has now become a north-northeast direction. So this is a little bit more of that curve away from us that we were expecting starting to happen. And the storm is picking up a little bit of speed, around 8 miles per hour. This morning it was moving at 5 miles per hour. That doesn't seem like a huge difference, but it's these subtle signs that kind of tell us, all right, our forecast is kind of going along as expected, or these are some of the adjustments to the impacts that we should expect. So that is something we keep a very close eye on, and the pressure still holding strong. This thing has dropped to 988 millibars, which is typical for a storm of this strength. So all these things we keep an eye on to kind of monitor what impacts we could expect here. Still, the biggest threat is going to be for our coastal neighborhoods. We've already gotten word that some of the businesses under the JFK Causeway have experienced that coastal flooding and have had to close, or there have been trouble spots out there with trying to maneuver in some of those more vulnerable spots around the coastal bend. Some of our coastal bend weather watchers in our Facebook group have mentioned to us that even yesterday, the Rockport Fulton Harbor there had seen a lot of that water coming up over the bend there. So it's been a little tricky for our coastal neighbors, but our news team is on top of it. We're going to bring you the very latest throughout today. And of course, meteorologist Diamond Dixon has your update on Chris 6 News at noon. But this is just to kind of tackle the nitty gritty with this storm. Something else I wanted to point out is we've been tracking the storm with one giant rain band kind of spanning the left half of the Gulf of Mexico. So that is bringing a lot of rain to our friends in Louisiana, where the storm is expected to go on to more northern portions of the Texas coastline, and really the valley getting walloped with that rain band. So if we look in a little closer to where this storm is headed, you can see a lot of rain there for the boot of Louisiana, and that's part of the problem. The storm's not even there yet, and they're still experiencing very heavy rainfall. So if you have friends and loved ones in Louisiana, especially along the coast, that's a bit of a struggle they've had today. If I move this around and we kind of zoom in closer to South Texas, a lot of this rain has been just off our coastline. Like, we had a few showers this morning, really not much to speak of other than that. So this rain band just close enough, but look down south, the valley has just been getting dumped on. Port Isabel had some flooding issues. Cameron County has been really getting a good deal of rainfall. When I say good, I mean that in a bad way. It's been a lot more rain than they'd asked for in a short period of time. And so there were some tornado warnings earlier this morning. So check in on your loved ones in the valley. Make sure they're doing okay with this storm. I'm not saying this is a devastating situation for our friends in the valley, but for some who live in more vulnerable neighborhoods, yeah, it's not a good Tuesday start for them. All right, so that's the latest with how the storm is doing. Let's talk about the track. Small little adjustments to the track. You can see the movement historically for this storm, little wobbles here and there, but this is our sign of a little more of that northeasterly curve with the steering currents that have been associated with this. So that's been the little wobble that's taken it this way, and now we're moving away from the western Gulf of Mexico, which is what we want, because we don't want to be near the storm. We would love to get some beneficial rain from it in the watershed, but that just does not appear to be in the cards for us. This storm is going to continue to move across the Gulf of Mexico on this more north-northeastward path, and it's expected to be a hurricane by the time we head into this afternoon, perhaps 1 p.m., 4 p.m. We'll keep an eye on it. I would take my bets on either of those time frames for becoming a Category 1 hurricane. It should make landfall as a hurricane in Louisiana. This has kind of been going back and forth between a Category 1 or a Category 2 storm because it's going to be right on that threshold. But either way, there's not a whole lot of difference between maximum sustained winds of 100 miles per hour versus 85 miles per hour. That's not a good time. I also want to point out here with the cone, something to maybe give you a little comfort, because a couple of folks have asked me, hey, are we sure this thing is going to stay away from us? It is close for comfort, but look at how narrow this cone is. It tells you there's a lot of confidence in this forecast, so we feel pretty good about the steering elements that are taking Francine away from us and toward the northern Gulf Coast. This will eventually move inland and bring heavy downpours to central parts of the country along Arkansas. Basically, the Mississippi River Valley is going to be dealing with a lot of rain as this thing moves inland and falls apart. So that's the nitty-gritty with the storm. How about what's happening here locally? So we talked a little bit about the rain. Here's a current view of the radar with that heaviest rain band right off our coast. If we put this into motion over the past 3 hours, we've had some showers that have been dancing off the coast. There was a little bit of rain along 181 this morning during Christic sunrise, moving from Aransas County through San Patricio County into Nueces County. And it really hasn't been super impactful for us even right now. Just a few showers. If anything, Baffin Bay has been getting the bulk of the rainfall. Southern and coastal portions of Claiborne County, Kennedy County. I hope we can get some of this rainfall in our forecast, but it's going to be very sparse and really locked into our coastal counties. So if you are west of Highway 77, I really wouldn't count on much for rainfall. And you all will probably be the first to see the clouds clear out later this evening. When the storm begins to pull away from us, our rain chances go bye-bye, and that's the end of it for us until the weekend. So let's talk about what kind of atmosphere this storm is dealing with, because if we look at water vapor, this is the top third of the atmosphere, so it's way up high in the sky. Upstairs, you can see the blue here shows us where the moisture is with this storm, that counterclockwise flow. But notice right around early this morning, we get this cut in the storm. That was a little bit of dry air kind of impacting that storm. Most of the dry air shown here with a system that has been making false fall in our forecast, bringing in some of the drier air in the upper levels. So as soon as Francine pulls away from us, that's it. No more rain chances until the weekend, because this dry air is going to keep things nice and pleasant for us. Meanwhile, the steering flow out here, all of that is going to curve Francine on this northeastward path right on into the Louisiana coastline. So again, we feel pretty good that we're not going to see much for impacts outside of our coastal neighborhoods. Now, what I'm about to show you is going to be a map that is lit up like a Christmas tree, because we have a good deal of alerts that are tied to Francine. So let's get to it. Locally, we are still under a tropical storm watch. That means in yellow along the coast here, we've had a gusty day. Throughout today, we could see those gusts nearing tropical storm strength, around 40 miles per hour, but those would be gusts, likely not sustained winds. If you're on the island, Mustang Island, down to Padre Island, Whitecap Beach, all the way up to Port Aransas, and even some of our friends in Copano Bay probably going to feel the impact, the brunt of that gusty situation as we go through this afternoon. Other folks across Corpus Christi proper, we could see wind gusts around 30, 35 miles per hour, definitely not out of the question. And so a coastal flood advisory also in effect for where we are. Let me zoom in a little bit closer, because these boxes will readjust. Just to show you the tropical alerts, the yellow is the tropical storm watch, but here's why you shouldn't take the boat out today or really be out on the coast if you don't have to be. This blue is not just the color of the water on the map, that's a tropical storm warning. So Francine is close to us, far enough so we don't have so much trouble from it, but close enough to where the wind and the surf are going to be very dangerous. Again, you don't need to be in the water out there. The Gulf-facing beaches, especially problematic, high risk of rip currents. I know our surfers like to go out there and take advantage of some of the waves we may have, but I really don't think this is the best kind of scenario for you. It's just not worth it at this point. So a tropical storm warning for our Gulf-facing beaches and near-shore waters. Do not take the boat out there if you don't have to today. And a tropical storm watch. We're watching for tropical storm force winds. Possibly some of the coastal flooding that has already been reported by some of our coastal bend weather watchers around the area. Again, flooding under the JFK Causeway, flooding in the Rockport, Fulton Harbor, and some of the other inlets around the area. We have our neighborhood news reporters in your neighborhood, checking out the views. And if you would like to contribute yours, and it's safe to do so, we would love to have your pictures and photos in the Coastal Bend Weather Watchers group on Facebook, because we do relay those to the National Weather Service. So your reports, your posts, they become storm reports, and they matter. So coastal flooding going to be an issue that'll be in effect until 7 o'clock tonight. High tide comes in later this evening, and depending on how close Francine is to us still, we could still be dealing with the water being pushed into our coastline, plus high tide being a problem. So it's something that we need to be aware of. Stay weather aware throughout today, even though we're really not having any terrible impacts from this storm for most of the coastal bend. Again, on our immediate coastline, those neighborhoods are going to be definitely noticing that something is out there. So overall, our 2024 list of hurricane names, we've now made it to number 6. So far, we've had one major hurricane. We've had 2 hurricanes out there on top of that major hurricane, and Francine is going to be put in orange here probably in the next couple of hours, as again, we do expect it to be a hurricane when it makes landfall in Louisiana, and it will likely become a hurricane later today. So just in case you're keeping tabs, that's where we're at with the hurricane season as a whole. Now, a couple of takeaways for us. What to expect? Well, we're going to have most of those impacts today, so tomorrow's going to be a much better day for our coastal neighbors. Again, if you're west of Highway 77, you probably aren't going to notice much difference in the forecast other than, hey, it's a breezy, kind of gloomy day. Better weather is on the way for us the rest of this week. Wednesday is going to look like a much different picture and be warmer, so savor the cooler temps. It won't be the case as we head on into tomorrow. All right, so most of the impacts are along our coast, so we expect that coastal flooding to be an issue. If we do have some rain along the coast today, that could add to that problem. When it rains, it pours here in South Texas, and with tropical downpours, that'll definitely be the case. And of course, the risks along the coast, strong winds making for very rough surf. Again, coastal flooding, limiting access to certain roadways that are more vulnerable to flooding. So 361 or the JFK Causeway, those underparts, again, those businesses, if that's part of your daily commute, part of your lifestyle, where you're going, maybe you like to go fish, some of those common spots might be inaccessible or not safe to access. So again, what should you do? Stay weather aware. Mainly for our coastal neighbors, but here in the coastal bend at large, we watch out for our neighbors, and we're going to keep you on top of the very latest with Francine. So again, this is a better forecast for us. I'm not going to complain. I wish we could have some rainfall for our watershed, but as you'll find out on Chris 6 News at noon, I think we have some better rain chances at the tail end of our 7-day forecast that are going to help us out. So I'm going to jump in the chat really quick and see if anybody has questions. I mean, I think for the most part, we're pretty good to go. Jack wants to know, are we going to get any rain? I'm right there with you. The rain that we see today is probably going to be very sparse, very limited, and locked into our coastal counties, and probably very brief when we do find those tropical downpours. So likely not to see a whole lot of help in the rain department from Francine, and the reason why is we tend to be on the dry side of the storm. That's what we kind of call it. I'll actually take you back to a map now and show you the situation with that. And actually, I could probably show you a satellite loop of the storm right now. And for those of you who may be joining this Facebook Live a little bit later, we'll get you caught up. So here we're taking a wide view of the storm. Let's zoom in a little bit closer, and I can show you that, well, we got to zoom in the wrong way first. All right, now I can go this way and zoom in a little bit closer. So notice the movement here of our rain band that's right off our coast. Again, kind of teasing us, na-na-na-na-boo-boo, no rain for us, it seems, but a few showers, we'll take it. The rotation of this band in the counterclockwise direction, there's also a dry north wind or northeast wind that is coming down this way, and that's where a lot of our breeziness, disrespectful winds are going to come from, this northeast direction. So this is wind moving over land. It's pretty dry, and so that is why, even though we have this nice juicy rain band right off the coast, as soon as it moves in, it's kind of interacting with the drier air over land, and it really evaporates a lot of the rain. So we don't see a whole lot, unfortunately, but where we do have these little spotty showers again at times, they can come down in buckets. It's tropical in nature, so that's a possibility, but at this point I'm not really holding my breath for meaningful rainfall. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, so The benefit to this is this, of course, reduces any kind of negative impacts to us in terms of rainfall or freshwater flooding, unless, of course, you're along the immediate coast. But we're setting up for a pretty pleasant weather pattern the next couple of days. So high school football, I am making Larissa Liska the happiest person in the world this week, because high school football, I think the forecast is going to be pretty good for that. And, you know, hopefully we can get some decent repetitive days of okay rain. I don't need buckets coming down all in one day, but hopefully we have a couple of days in the 7-day forecast where we're expecting decent rain chances that include inland neighbors. And I just ask that you stay patient. We need some rainfall in the right places, and I think hopefully we'll get that soon. Maria asks, do you think we're getting rain next week? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And so that's kind of where I'm not feeling too salty about Francine leaving us high and dry, figuratively and metaphorically. So we'll stay patient and we'll hope the weather kind of works with us. So that's all the questions that I see in the chat. I'm gonna let y'all enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Again, in about an hour, Diamond Dixon will be here to give you your forecast on Chris 6 News at noon. So until then, hope y'all are staying safe out there and having a wonderful rest of your Taco Tuesday. See ya.